Today, we're going on a journey to find a lost empire. We're talking about the Songhai Empire, which was once the biggest, the most powerful, and wealthiest state in all of African history, a true powerhouse of gold, salt, and knowledge that just, well, it vanished. So picture this. It's 1858. A German explorer named Heinrich Barth finally reaches the legendary city of Gao, the old capital of Songhai. But instead of a magnificent city, he finds ruins, crumbling buildings, a few sad-looking huts. The quote you see here just perfectly captures the mystery he stumbled upon. How on earth could a place once known as the most splendid city of Africa become a total ghost town? And that right there, that is the big question we are tackling. How does an empire that controlled a territory bigger than Western Europe, an empire literally built on mountains of gold, just fade away into nothing? To solve this, we're going to start with those ruins. Then we'll zoom out and look at a kind of hidden pattern in the region's history. We'll see Songhai's incredible golden age, then pinpoint the fatal flaw that doomed it, watch the final devastating blow land, and finally, we'll ask what this lost empire really left behind for us. Okay, back to those ruins in Gao. The mystery isn't just that the city fell. Cities fall all the time. It's the sheer scale of it. How does a bustling metropolis, a center of the world, turn into a handful of huts? That's what's so puzzling. Now, to really get what happened to Songhai, we first have to understand this key idea that pretty much defines the history of this whole part of the world. It's a pattern historians have a name for, the imperial cycle. So this imperial cycle is like a predictable rhythm. It goes like this. A kingdom gets strong, it conquers its neighbors, it builds a huge empire. But then it gets too big or too unstable from the inside, and the whole thing comes crashing down. And then what happens? Well, almost right away, one of the places it used to rule rises up from the ashes to start the whole cycle over again. You can see the basic steps right here, and this wasn't some one-time thing. Before Songhai, the Ghana Empire followed this exact path. After them came the incredible Mali Empire. You've probably heard of its ridiculously wealthy king, Mansa Musa. Songhai was just the next and biggest turn of this giant historical wheel. So fast forward to the 15th century, the mighty Mali Empire is starting to get weak, crumbling from the inside out. The kingdom of Songhai, which had been one of its subjects, sees a power vacuum, and they seize their chance. This was the start of their golden age. And the resources for building an empire here, they were just immense. You had the fertile Niger River for food, the camel, which opened up these massive desert trade routes, and most importantly, the region had two of the world's most valuable things, gold, obviously, but also massive salt mines in the Sahara. And you gotta remember, in a world without refrigerators, salt was absolutely essential for preserving food, which made it just as precious as gold. Now, Songhai's rise was really powered by two very different but equally important leaders. First, you add Sunni Ali. He was a brutal, brilliant military genius who used a powerful river navy and pure terror to conquer a massive amount of territory. He basically built the empire's body. But then came Askia Muhammad. He was a smart administrator who built its brain and its soul, turning a conquered land into a stable, multi-ethnic state. And under Askia Muhammad, Songhai wasn't just big, it was sophisticated. I mean, he set up a whole bureaucracy with different ministries, governors for all the provinces, standardized taxes. This wasn't just about conquest anymore. This was nation building on an absolutely epic scale, and it created a time of incredible peace and wealth. But here's the thing, even at its absolute peak, the empire had this fatal flaw, a crack in its foundation that would eventually tear the whole thing apart from the inside. The empire's fatal flaw can be boiled down to one single number, 37. That's how many sons the great King Askia Muhammad had. And unlike in European monarchies where it was usually clear, the firstborn son gets the throne, West African tradition often meant any male relative could make a claim. So you've got dozens of ambitious princes all thinking it's their turn. Well, the stage was set for total chaos. And this is what happened next. The moment the great king was old and blind, his sons just ripped the kingdom to shreds. For more than 50 years, the empire was just consumed by this bloody cycle of coups, assassinations, and civil wars. And all that fighting, it drained the treasury, it fractured the army, and it left the empire dangerously exposed. So while Songhai was busy tearing itself apart, a new threat was rising up in the north. A threat armed with a new and absolutely devastating technology. The Saudi dynasty in Morocco was feeling pretty good about themselves after a huge victory over Portugal. But they needed money. So they looked south, and what did they see? A divided, distracted empire sitting on top of the world's richest gold and salt mines. It was an opportunity that was just too good to pass up. All right, now look at this breakdown of the big, decisive battle in 1591. On paper, this should have been a cakewalk for Songhai. I mean, they had 10 times more soldiers. But the real story, the game changer, is in that last row. Songhai had spears and arrows. The Moroccans, they had gunpowder. The result was a complete slaughter. The sheer noise and the destructive power of the cannons and muskets absolutely terrified the Songhai army, and they broke and ran. But here's the most important thing to get. Gunpowder was just the final push. The Moroccan invasion didn't defeat a mighty empire. It delivered the killing blow to an empire that had already bled itself to death from the inside.
And the collapse, it was sudden, it was total, and it left a scar on the continent that would last for centuries.
So what happened after? Well, with no central power to keep order, the whole region just shattered into all these smaller, warring states. And this power vacuum was an absolute disaster. It allowed European traders on the coast to just exploit the chaos, which fueled the horrific expansion of the transatlantic slave trade, because all these local conflicts created a steady supply of captives.
For the people who actually lived through it, the sense of loss was just profound. This quote from a historian in Timbuktu really captures that despair of watching a world of scholarship and order and culture just completely fall apart.
And yet, the story doesn't end in total darkness. Incredibly, a lot of the knowledge from Songhai's famous libraries in Timbuktu actually survived. For hundreds of years, local families secretly guarded tens of thousands of these precious manuscripts, hiding them from raiders and preserving the memory of their civilization for the future. And that brings us to our last question, because this imperial cycle, it isn't just ancient history. Songhai's story is this powerful reminder that internal division, fighting amongst ourselves, can be way more dangerous than any enemy at the gates. It really makes you wonder, what modern empires or nations or even companies today could stand to learn a lesson from the lost empire of gold?